to interview Lydia for her testimony. Now, it's an amazing thing. I love how God works. Now, about 5 years ago, I landed in Victory Church, just as Lydia was growing into ministry. So I came in as a baby Christian from a very different experience and background as Lydia. But as God would have it, we've ended up being on youth teams together. We've ended up being in the same Bible college. And, at times, she's like, I don't know, an annoying little but I've been given a question set so that I don't terrorize her. Because, we can have a bit of banter, me and Lyd. But the beautiful thing is that, God, he's interested in not just the bank manager, but also the bank robber. He doesn't just save the drug addict. He also saves the church-going, child who's grew up in church her whole life. And I love Lydia's story, and it's quite phenomenal that he's taken us on a journey over the past 5 years where I've been in very close proximity to Lydia. So she's earned a place in my heart. She's an awesome individual. Let's get to the question set. Can we give her a round of applause? Yeah, it's good. Lydia should be celebrated. Lydia, it's a privilege to have you with us today to share your story. And we know it's quite a story. But firstly, could you tell us a little about who you are?
Yeah, so if you don't know me, my name's Lydia. I am the youngest of the Reed family. If you know of the Reed family, we've been at Victory, I think it'll be 8 years in March. So we've been here a little while. Currently, I get to be a worship leader, a youth leader, and a kids leader at Victory. And I'm currently at Regent's Bible College, studying in applied theology and youth ministry, but part-time I work for a dementia services charity as well. So that's me.
Awesome. It's very evident that there's a massive call on Lydia's life. I absolutely love it. So, Lydia, what was it like for you before? We know that you grew up in church, but what was it like you before you had a radical encounter with Christ?
So I was brought up in a Christian home with Christian parents. I was basically raised in the church. My mum became a Christian when she was 14 at a Billy Graham event, she met my dad later on. They started dating, and then literally within a few weeks, my dad then became a Christian. But my mum was a nanny for many years, and dad was basically raised in Boys Brigade. So put the two together, being a Christian and then having those morals as well. They had very strong ideals of how they wanted to raise me and my siblings. So I'm the youngest of four, so there was quite a lot of us to keep on top of. So being brought up in a Christian home and brought up in the church, I would say in certain areas they were very strict, but in other areas perhaps not so much strict. But very much what they were strict on was coming to church. So you would normally see us on a Sunday in a row. We'd normally have the Reed row, and Mum would be on one side, Dad would be on the other, and the four of us would be sat in the row. And we weren't allowed to move. We weren't allowed to talk or do anything. We were taught to worship. We were taught to engage. So that was kind of my upbringing. I kind of got to about 11, I'd say, and we were in a different church at this point. And I kind of got to the point where my friends at church were finding church really boring, didn't want to be there, and so they started hanging out in the foyer during the service. I only had to do that once to know that I wasn't allowed to do that. Let's just say that. I would try it on every week, and all Dad would have to do is come out, give me the look, and very sheepishly, I'd walk back in and say, sorry, guys, I've got to go into the service. So that was kind of all I've known, really, is that church is all I've known. Christianity is all I've known. When I was younger, I genuinely thought that everyone was a Christian and that everyone went to church. So when I got to primary school and everyone was saying that they went to the park or they did this on a Sunday, I was like, what? Like, you didn't go to church? You don't believe in God? I couldn't believe it. So that was kind of like just normal for me, really. Seeing like people speaking in tongues, seeing people fall over in the spirit, like demonic possession, things like that. That's just normal for me to see that. Even to the point where like me and my siblings would like pretend to pray and we pretend to fall over in the kitchen. We thought that was really funny. So that was like really normal for us. And then when I got to secondary school, I would say I was very much kind of protected from the world. I had no idea some of the stuff that went on. Obviously, because of, like, you know, when you see different demonic things in church and stuff, I knew there was a certain level of darkness, but all I had known was that God was good, and that was it. So, like, I had no idea of the darkness that went on. So when I got to secondary school, that was very much a shock for me. I, like, thought, what on earth is happening? I thought it was the end of the world. I was like, what's happening? Like, people are sleeping together outside of marriage, people are swearing, people are drinking. I was like, what on earth is going on? So that was, like, very much a shock for me. So I would say when you've got, like, Christian kids that are brought up in church, I would say you've got 3 different areas that they could end up going in. I would say you've got the one kid that perhaps gets to secondary school and is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I don't need to worry about God anymore, and they end up down that road. You've then got the kid that is like, you know, I still love God, but I also love this worldly thing too, and they kind of end up in the middle. And then you've got this other kid that perhaps, which is definitely me, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful, I'm staying really close to Jesus because this is just terrifying. So that was kind of my experience. But up until I was about 13, I did really struggle with, like, where am I meant to be? What am I meant to be doing? I just did not fit in at all. I felt so weird, so lonely, just because I couldn't relate to anyone. I didn't have a youth group at the time that I was going to, so I just felt really lonely. And at that point, I started to struggle with anxiety quite a bit as well. Not to the point where it was, like, medically diagnosed, but I did struggle with feeling quite anxious and worried a lot. And I definitely started to worry about what people were thinking of me, so that played a big effect as well. So at that point, I perhaps did, again, like, not to the point where it was really bad, but perhaps a little bit of depression. I was, like, kind of having thoughts of, like, what's the point in even being here anymore? If I don't fit in, what am I even meant to be doing here? Not, like, deep suicidal thoughts, but, like, thoughts of that. So obviously, being brought up in church, you're constantly drilled into you that if you're worried, if you're anxious, if you're upset, go and pray. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this whole God thing out for myself. So I think there must have been band practice or something on at church. So all of the family were out and Dad was just downstairs watching telly. So I thought, fine, I'm going to go and try this God thing for myself. So I did a Matthew 6, verse 6. I went into my bedroom, I closed the door, and I prayed to my Father. I had no idea what I was doing, but I got on the floor, just prayed, and the only way I can describe this experience is it literally felt like Jesus just walked into my bedroom. And that's the only way I can, like, describe the experience. Nothing, like, crazy or dramatic happened, but I was just so aware that he was with me. And in that moment, just, like, all anxiety went and, like, all feeling of who am I? And I just suddenly knew where I belonged, knew what I was meant to do, knew who I was. And there was just so much peace. So that was, like, kind of my first encounter with Jesus. Yeah.
So good. So good. And, you know, the important thing for me there from what Lydia was saying is that, you know, coming into church as someone with a very different background, you know, being in drug addiction and other different bits and bobs, it's very easy for me to look around and just think that people that have grown up in church don't have any problems, you know, that they don't have anxieties and feel like they're lost and don't really know. And so I just love that, Lyd. That's absolutely amazing. So I remember your excitement getting prepared to go to Bible college, Regent's Bible College, Youth Track?
Yes.
Youth Track, 3-year degree?
Yep.
Come on. Tell us what made you want to go to Bible college in the first place.
Okay, so I'd never, ever thought in a million years that I would end up in Bible college or even end up on this stage. If you told me I'd be here doing ministry, I would have, like, run for the hills. So it only had to have been God, but the story kind of starts. I was in college doing a BTEC course in health and social care, and, like, for so many years I was like, going to be a midwife, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that was just what I was set on, going to be a midwife. And then suddenly I was just like, I don't think I want to be a midwife anymore. And, well, to be completely honest, I started looking at what the entry requirements were for uni, and I thought, I don't think I can be bothered. It just seemed like so much effort to get in, and just, like, I just wasn't, now that I was like kind of growing in my relationship with God, my heart had changed, and like what my heart was for had changed. And so I kind of thought, okay, I'm now not doing midwifery. What on earth am I going to do with my life? Like, for so long, Dad had like been giving us motivational talks all the time about saying you have to have aspirations and dreams for life. You can't just do nothing. So if you ever want a motivational talk, go and talk to Dad, because he's great at motivational talks. So I knew I had to do something. So I started praying. Honestly, the amount of times I changed my mind, I was looking at social work, primary teaching, staying in my full-time job at Matan at the time. But just nothing gave me peace and nothing felt right. And then suddenly I just like had this thought of going to Bible college, because I'd heard that James was at Regent's, Bex was doing her master's there. So I'd heard a lot about it, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to have a look. Went on the website and came across Youth Track, and straight away I was just like, something just inside of me, just like, I just got really excited. And there was just like a piece about it as well. So we went for an open day, and after that I applied, and just like all the doors just naturally opened, and just like everything just worked out. Like every obstacle that came in the way, God just sorted it out. And so I knew that I didn't have like a clear word, but like every door just seemed to open, and somehow I landed at Regent's and everything just worked out. So that's how I ended up at Regent's, yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. So Romans 12:2. It says, do not conform to the patterns of the world. Thank you, Mum and Dad. But be transformed by renewing of the mind. Thank you, the Bible, and that time in prayer to the Father. And then you can seek and approve God's good, pleasing, and perfect will. You know, and sometimes that's the reality of the scenario, is trying to seek out exactly what is God's calling for your life. It's one of the biggest questions, really. What would you say to anybody here today that was battling with how to work out their calling in God?
Yeah, I think for those who maybe know your calling or think you know your calling, something that when I was praying into this interview, I felt God say to me is, don't get your identity confused with your calling. For me, for so long, I thought that all I was like, I was going to be a wife or a mother or a youth leader or a worship leader, and I thought that's all I was. And I got my identity confused with my calling. And then Jesus revealed to me that actually, if he takes away all those things, who am I? And I realized that my identity had to be rooted in Jesus. So first off, don't get your identity confused with your calling, is what I would say. But also, to those who may be thinking, I've got no idea what my calling is, what am I even meant to be doing? What I would say is that God wants to use you. And don't believe the lie that you're too sinful, or you're too imperfect, or you're not good enough. God wants to use you. But don't think that it's going to be the way that you want it to be. Don't try and force open a door. Don't try and force what you think your calling is. Let God do the work for it, because his timing is perfect. Like, if you had told me when I was 13, when I first met Jesus, that I was going to be a worship leader, I would have been like, there is no way. I would have ran and never come back. I would have been like, there is no way. But because Jesus didn't reveal that was my calling to me then, he's waited till now when I've been ready for it, because his timing is perfect. So don't think that you have to force a door open or force your calling, because you've already got your calling, but just wait for Jesus to reveal to you at the perfect timing. Yeah.
Come on, so good. So good. Remaining rooted in Jesus. So it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
Is it easy?
No.
No, it's not easy. Okay, so what are your passions, and what specifically drives you to live for Christ every single day?
I'd say my passions, like what God's really placed in my heart, two things are the next generation, young people, kids. I so long to see the next generation leading their next generation, because that's what Jesus has done for me. But I long to see the next generation so in love with Jesus that they are willing to just give up what the world is telling them to do and to live for Jesus. That's like what I long to see. And then what my other passion is to see the church stop focusing on the church and start focusing on Jesus. And I think my passion so much is to just make way for Jesus. Just get out the way, everyone get out the way, and just let Jesus do what he wants to do. So they're my passions. But what drives me? What drives me every day? The fact how faithful Jesus has been to me and how he's given me everything that I just owe him everything back. So that's what drives me to live for him every day.
So good, so good. You know, I went to Bible college myself, and I really struggled with pastors' kids, these kids that had been raised up by pastors. But you know, as a church goer, if my kids turn out half as good as Lyd, I'll be a happy man. Yeah. So you mentioned about raising up the next generation. You're actually leading a teaching session in amongst some of the greatest teachers that the country has to offer during the Ministry Activation Year. So tell us about the Ministry Activation Year and your involvement with pioneering it.
So the Ministry Activation Year, just to sum it up, is basically a year-long course that puts theology and practical ministry together. So the course basically allows you to go deeper in theology and know more about God while also growing and developing in the giftings and callings God has placed on your life. So as I've been talking earlier about perhaps not knowing your calling, or perhaps you do know your calling and you're like, I don't know what to do with it, this course is going to be so good for you because you'll have a great team around you that will encourage you and help you step into your calling and gifting while also getting amazing teaching for a really good price. So if you'd like to sign up, there will be...
How much is that price?
£350.
And how much is Bible college?
Thousands of pounds.
30 odd?
Yeah, maybe more than that, yeah.
Same teachers?
Same teacher, this is going to sound harsh, but even better teachers, I would say. So if you want to sign up, there is a sign-up option out there, so do sign up. But my involvement, I have been corresponding with the lecturers, and I've been getting a timetable together and basically trying to keep James and Clyde on the right track, being the sensible head. So that's been my role in pioneering that.
Okay, so what would you say to someone about getting involved?
Do it, because it's going to be amazing. Honestly, the lineup is so good this year. You don't want to miss this year, because I don't know if we'll have the same lecturers again. So make sure you sign up. It's a really good lineup this year.
I mean, I'm biased, but I would argue that it'd be foolish not to. Okay, Lydia, that's amazing. So what 3 life lessons from your journey thus far? I appreciate that you're very young, but you've got a very wise head on your shoulders. You've got the call of God on your life. You're now studying theology. You've been raised in the Christian network. You've experienced a few struggles. But what would you say if you had to give us 3 life lessons for us to go away with today? What might they be?
So the first one, I would say, what I've really learned over the years is to trust God over everything and everyone. Like, being brought up in a Christian home, because your family are so loving, you just trust them. Like, I would trust each of my family with my entire life. So when you then get older and you then get hurt by people, like I say this all the time, I'm such a daddy's girl and I love my dad a lot, and when I was younger, I thought he was perfect, I thought he was amazing, I thought he'd never let me down, and then one day he did hurt me. He did upset me, and I realized that the only person I will ever be able to fully depend on and trust is Jesus. So don't put your trust in humans or in things, but only put it fully in Jesus, because he's the only one that'll never let you down. The next one is know your identity is rooted in Jesus, not in anything else. I think, especially being brought up in church and in a Christian home, I was never really told about the enemy and about how the enemy does try to come against us. And so what I found over the last few years, what the enemy's really tried to attack me is my identity. And as I said, because I thought my identity was found in the blessings of God, when then they were taken away, I realized I had no idea what my identity was in. So know your identity is rooted in Jesus, not in anything else, because that is your foundation. When you know who you are in Jesus, nothing else can come against you. So that's the next thing. And then Jesus wants to use you. Over the last few weeks, I've really felt Jesus been speaking to me that even like recently I felt I'm not good enough to be a worship leader. I'm not good enough to be a youth leader. I'm not good enough to be teaching young people. Like, what am I doing? And Jesus was like, there is nothing that can come against the calling I've placed on your life. And know that Jesus wants to use you, that you're not too imperfect, you're not too sinful. There's nothing that Jesus can't forgive. So know that Jesus wants to use you.
So good, so good. Peace, power, and purpose in equal measure. Thank you. I wonder if you could give Lydia an amazing round of applause, please.